Good morning. Will you be hanging on every word that Donald Trump has to say in that interview with us later?
Well, I look forward to seeing it.
I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch that, George. Sorry, Richard.
I very much look forward to seeing that interview.
What significance will it have in America? Obviously, it's a big deal here. We've got Nigel Farage, a very well-known face and name in this country. But will it have an impact over in America?
I don't know. It's a different system here, where the royal family in the United Kingdom is very important for leading the country and personality and in many ways. But the political decisions are almost all made by the Parliament and Prime Minister. And here, the cult of personality that Donald Trump has managed to surround himself with in order to get elected, which is true of just about every president, has some very disturbing qualities to it. And Americans are worried that if Donald Trump becomes president again, he will become an authoritarian, that the world leaders that he admires are not people like the royal family of the United Kingdom, but those like Vladimir Putin and dictators. He has spoken too often with a rhetoric of a dictator about the power of the presidency, and combining that with his pending criminal charges. A lot of them are relating to the fact that he was unwilling to cede power when he lost an election. We are very, very concerned about Donald Trump. So if we were to analogize him to anyone in British history, we might think about Oliver Cromwell, or someone who sought to really used the Republican form of government to seize power and exercise it in a dictatorial way. And that's not what this country wants. So before we get to discussing any of the issues, we need to think about the character of the president, and that we have to have a president who is accountable to the Constitution and who doesn't think of himself as above the Constitution, above the rule of law. And sadly, what we saw in January of 2021 was quite to the contrary.
What about all the criminal charges that are mounting up against him, Richard? I mean, if he can deflect those before the presidential election, even if he's then found guilty, is it right he can absolutely pardon himself, which is something that could never happen in this country?
Well, he could try to pardon himself. I don't think a self-pardon would be valid. But if he becomes president of the United States, he will supervise the Justice Department. And so then all he needs to do is appeal the federal cases appeal them to the appellate courts. And then the Justice Department simply defaults and gives up the case. And so the federal cases, the federal charges will almost certainly disappear if Donald Trump becomes the next president in January. The state charges, the state cases, that's a little bit more complex. But we see the situation in Georgia spiraling out of control. We hope that case should certainly go to trial. We should be focusing on the conduct of Donald Trump, not the prosecutor. But that case is delayed very much. The New York case may proceed to trial within the next month or two, and we'll see what comes out of that.
It's interesting to hear you talk about the character of a president and how that's important, because from where we're sitting on the other side of the pond, President Biden appears to have immense difficulties fulfilling the obligations of being a president satisfactorily.
Yes, a lot of Americans would like to see a choice between, quite frankly, two younger candidates. That's one of the many concerns here. And not every American is going to go to the polls. These are their favorite choices in either political party. The system for choosing the nominee of both the Democratic and the Republican Party certainly needs some fixing. We saw in 2016 a lot of Republicans opposed Donald Trump and felt strongly that he should not receive the nomination for president. I was one of them. I was a Republican for 30 years. And if the Republicans had elected anybody else, I think they would have ended up serving 2 terms and Joe Biden wouldn't be there. The Democrats have problems with their primary process as well. Yeah. An incumbent president has enormous power over the political apparatus of his party. And we're seeing with Donald Trump that even a former president has enormous power over the political apparatus of his party. And that means that challengers, primary challengers, are very, very unlikely to succeed in either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
The people in Britain, it must be said, I'm sure all around the world, are saying the same thing. How is it in a country the size of the United States, a population of nearly 340 million, the most powerful country in the world, it's the best you can offer? Trump and Biden, that's it?
Well, part of the problem is in the primaries, very few voters show up. And the voters who show up in the Republican primary are extremely loyal to the Republican establishment, which now is going to be solidly behind Donald Trump. He was the former president of the United States. The same thing in the Democratic Party. We had a very talented young congressman, Dean Phillips from Minnesota, run against Joe Biden, and he received only 2.5 or 3% of the vote in the Democratic primaries, and now he has dropped out. So this is a system that very much needs fixing. I think it's tied to the amount of money that's in politics on both the Democratic side and the Republican side. The way campaign finance is handled in this country, you have an enormous war chest for both Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and now they're going to use that money against each other in November.